Rivlin is speaking now. Let's take that live.
Excuse me.
נשיא הבונדסטאג וסגני הנשיא, חברי הבונדסטאג, גברתי הקנצלרית,
Madam Chancellor,
נשיא הבונדסטאג,
President of the
נשיא
Bundestag,
בית המשפט העליון,
President of the Supreme Court, ambassadors,
ניצולי השואה,
Holocaust survivors,
משפחות גולדין ושאול,
the Goldin and Shaul families who are here with us now, honored guests.
אני רוצה לפתוח את דבריי,
I want to begin my remarks
תפילה עברית עתיקה,
with an ancient Hebrew prayer,
תפילת יזכור,
the Yizkor prayer,
שנוסחה המקורי
the original version of which was written here on the soil of Germany
1,000 שנה.
1,000 years ago.
מלווה תפילה זו את העם היהודי,
Till today, the prayer accompanies the Jewish people, and it is said in honor and memory of those who are dear to us, dearer than all.
יזכור אלוהים,
May God remember,
יזכור עם ישראל,
and may the people of Israel
את
remember,
הנשמות
the souls
של כל חללי השואה
of
וגיבוריה,
all victims and heroes of the Holocaust,
אלפי ישראל,
the many Jewish souls who were burned during the Holocaust.
6 מיליון
6 million
נשים ונשים,
men, women, children, boys and girls,
ובתולות,
young men and young women,
וטף,
elderly and the young,
ושנטבחו,
who were killed and who were massacred and who were murdered
משונות ונוראות בידי
by
המרצחים הנאצים,
the German Nazis and their accomplices
העמים.
from other nations.
שופט הארץ, זכור נא את נחלי הדם,
The nation will remember the blood spilled like water
שמע ישראל, שזעקו
and the cries of Shema Israel from those who were taken to their deaths.
בענקת המעונים, תעלה לפני כיסא כבודך. הנאהבים והנעימים בחייהם ובמותם לא נפרדו. ינוחו בשלום,
May they rest in peace,
ונאמר,
and may we say Amen.
Madam und Herren, מכובדיי, נולדתי
Dignitaries, I was born in Jerusalem
בספטמבר 1939.
in September 1939.
כאשר נפתחו שערי המוות,
When the gates of death were opened,
עלינו
my
לכיתה א'.
friends and I were just going into first grade.
על ממדיה של הזוועה.
We knew little about the scale of the atrocities.
פגשנו שורדים,
Slowly, we met survivors and we heard their testimonies.
אולי בפעם הראשונה,
With them, we
את המספר
saw for the first time the numbers on their arms. At first,
דעתם נטרפה עליהם.
we thought they'd gone mad,
לאט לאט הבנו
but we gradually understood
שהעולם
that the world,
הוא שנטרף.
it was the world that had gone mad.
ב-19 באוגוסט
On the 19th of August 1965, and I remember this as if it were today,
בין המוחים.
I was one of those who protested
השגריר הגרמני הראשון
against the arrival of Paulus I, German ambassador to Israel, who came to present his letters of credentials.
10 שנים לפני כן.
10 years earlier,
הייתי גם בין המוחים.
I was also among those who protested against the reparations agreements between Israel and West Germany, between David Ben-Gurion and Chancellor Adenauer. I protested against what I saw back then as a defeatism, an attempt to obscure the atrocities.
היום
Today,
עומד כאן
I stand here in front of you and with you.
לא קנתה את סליחתם של היהודים. אכן,
Indeed,
כספי השילומים
the reparations payments
למדינת ישראל הצעירה.
were a lifeblood for the young state of Israel.
קבלת האחריות של
But
גרמניה
the acceptance of Germany's responsibility for the Holocaust of the Jews and the public confrontation, public, constant, prolonged confrontation of Germany with its crimes would allowed and continue to allow the new chapter in our relations. Israel and Germany are marching together, tension and bravery, from the past to the future, between the obligation to remember and never forget to the commitments for the future, which require us to look ahead and to act together on the basis of joint values and interests. At the end of the Second World War, Europe rebuilt itself, especially Western Europe, as a new Europe. A Europe that sketches out for the whole world a horizon of open borders, of cooperation, of rights, civil and individual rights. And with the project of the European Union, which was later founded at the... And Auschwitz stood as a warning light. The unifiers of Europe saw a duty not to let the Holocaust get forgotten, and a warning against the racism of war. Over the years, out of a deep confrontation with the destruction that Nazi Germany caused to the Jewish people and Europe and the whole of humanity, Germany acted as the leader of the new Europe and of the Union. The same country that was the terror of the free world became a lighthouse of democracy and liberalism. You, Madam Chancellor, have on more than one occasion been called the leader of the free world, and rightly so. The responsibility that Germany bears on its shoulders is immense. It's especially heavy because today, Europe, like parts of the whole world, once again, is being transformed. Europe today is being haunted again by the ghosts of the past. Ideas of supremacy, national purity, xenophobia, explicit, ugly anti-Semitism, haunting the whole of Europe, from the right to the extreme left. Anti-Semitism percolates the heart of the European leadership. But I must emphasize, this is not the 1930s. We are not on the brink of a second Holocaust, or anything that comes even close. But we cannot ignore the new-old anti-Semitism, the racism and hatred of the other, and especially of Jews, of Muslims and foreigners, which has reared its ugly head again. I'm well aware that some of the attacks from Jews come from the direction of Muslims. I'm not ignoring that, but still, it's no coincidence, Mr. President Steinmeier, that on last Yom Kippur, it was a far-right extremist who tried to commit an attack at the synagogue in Halle, and when he failed, he moved on to a Muslim shop. We greatly appreciated your visit, President Steinmeier, at that synagogue in Halle after the event. It's true, Jews are the first target for racist, nationalist cross-continental movements. But sometimes parties with anti-Semitic roots hide their hatred for Jews and publicly express their hatred for Muslims. Anti-Semitism. For me and the nation in Israel, we have deep respect for the efforts being made by the German government since Adenauer to mitigate anti-Semitism and hatred. German governments throughout the years, and under your leadership too, Mr. President and Madam Chancellor, have made unprecedented investments in memorialization and in memory, in the fight against Holocaust denial, and in education, of the next generations. This is also the place to thank you, the President of the Bundestag, and to the German government, the whole German government, for your support for the rehabilitation of Jewish graveyards in Eastern Europe, a project that's been going on for 5 years now. We welcome this, but we recognize there is a gulf. There is a gulf between the influence and the inconceivable chronic nature of anti-Semitism. In the first decades after the Second World War, I believed that the power of the atrocities and that sense of the abyss to which hatred leads would be enough to contain anti-Semitism and get rid of it forever. But now, as the President said, today, unfortunately, I understand that no such thing happened. And for me, as a member of the Jewish people, I do not have a recipe to eliminate anti-Semitism. But I am here in order to tell you that the state of Israel and Germany are true partners in the necessary, moral, and perhaps even eternal stand against anti-Semitism and hatred of the others, which led to the destruction of humanity that happened here 75 years ago. The Jewish people is a people who remember. We remember not out of a sense of supremacy, we remember not out of wanting to focus on the atrocities or a sense of self-justification. We remember because we understand that if we don't remember, history repeats itself. Not just for Jews and the Roma and Sinti, but Poles and tens of thousands of other human beings were burnt in the furnaces of Auschwitz. Human dignity, liberty, human solidarity, all these went up in the smoke of the Auschwitz crematoria. And this is the lesson, the central and most shocking lesson of the Holocaust, that a Holocaust can happen. We are full of admiration for Germany's efforts and its role in the international fight against anti-Semitism and against racism and baseless hatred against others. At the same time, we all understand today that this is not a battle that can be won once and for all. It is a battle in which we must stand firm generation after generation to grab out the poisonous weeds where they grow every day. We must not give up. Germany must not fail.
Germany,
the country of the final solution, has taken the responsibility on itself to defend national liberal values in a reality in which they are being eroded by waves of populism. If in Germany the attempt to stand against this fails, then it may fail everywhere else. If in the place where the Holocaust of the Jews was born, Jews cannot live freely and are not free of fear, then nowhere in Europe will they be able to do so. I appeal to you, members of this House, our friends. Europe and the whole world are raising their eyes towards Germany. The responsibility is at your doorstep. I'm not saying so because I want to preach morality, but out of a sense of partnership, a sense of concern, a sense of respect and admiration for the true and honest efforts that you are making. I know that you are confronting many challenges. Together with your allies, Germany is leading the effort, the European Union effort, the world effort to deal with the climate crisis, the refugee crisis and international migration. I believe and hope that citizens of Germany and its leadership will continue, even in the decades to come, to repel hatred and incitement, to continue serving as an example for leadership and historical obligation, moderation and tolerance.
I
want to strengthen the hand of the leadership in Germany for its determination, for its clear voice. Although we cannot make anti-Semitism and hatred of the other disappear, we can never allow them again to defeat us. Never can we let them defeat us again.
מכובדיי, מורותיי ורבותיי, יש ויכוח בינינו.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's an argument between us. A deep argument between friends, between true friends, regarding the attempts to reach an understanding with the leadership in Iran. I know that some argued that we must distinguish between the rhetoric of the Iranian leadership and its real-world policies. But on a day like this, I wish to tell you that we don't have the privilege of ignoring its policies or its rhetoric. We all know perfectly well just how much rhetoric that educates for hatred of Jews, for annihilation, is dangerous. We all know what its power is. We do not have a conflict with the people of Iran. We do not have a conflict with the Iranian people. On the contrary, between the nations are warm and meaningful ties. Israel is the biggest community of Jews from Iranian extraction, a community that is proud of its heritage and of its culture and of its origins. But unfortunately, the threat posed now by the leadership of Iran, that threat is not a theoretical question. For us, this is an existential question. We didn't define it as such. The Iranian leadership did so, which steadfastly announces that it wants to uproot the existence of the State of Israel and declares that our annihilation is a political agenda for it. We're not in 1938, no, but we can't ignore the support that they provide to terrorist organizations on Israel's borders, hundreds of planes and trucks full of dangerous war material, including precision missiles which have one goal: hitting Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, Haifa and Beersheba, and the other towns of Israel. I welcome this Parliament's call not to distinguish between the military and political arms of Hezbollah, to recognize the political branch as a terrorist organization as well, and to outlaw Hezbollah. I call on the German government, with all due respect, to adopt this worthy call. The State of Israel knows to defend itself. The State of Israel knows to defend itself from the Iranian regime and its proxies, and it won't hesitate to do so. But nevertheless, I believe that any regime that aims for another country's annihilation, in words or deeds, that realizes its political vision using terrorism and hatred, grief and destruction, using the murder of innocents across the world, such a leadership is a threat to world peace itself. Faced with such a political vision, faced with such a leadership, there is only one possibility. We must isolate it. We must denounce it until its murderous pronunciations end. Friends, the conflicts in the Middle East are particularly complicated. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict long ago became a long tragedy for the two nations. But like other crises in the world were solved, I am convinced that this one too can be ended. Last night in Washington, we saw moments that could inspire hope, even great hope. After years of political stagnation, President Trump presented a plan that might allow both nations to renew dialogue and to make progress towards a common future for us and the Palestinians. This isn't simple. Both sides must study the plan in detail. It's a plan that demands major, serious, difficult concessions from both sides. But we must not surrender, because whoever gives up is giving up on the chance. And I refuse to give up. The basis of any solution must be deep respect for human life, in the belief that on the other side there are also people who want to live like us. Each side has its own truth, its own anxieties, and its own hopes. Nevertheless, despite the difficulties, we must think of solutions that strengthen security and stability in order to achieve prosperity for both sides. I hope that this plan will be implemented based on these principles and will lead to a better reality for everyone. The power of the State of Israel is turning us in the eyes of many to Goliath. And the Palestinians are David. We're not Goliath. And they're no David. We're not David. And they're not Goliath. The power and strength of Israel over the years was and remains the key to peace, not the obstacle to it. Such happened with Egypt. Such happened with Jordan. True, the relations between Israel and the Palestinians are not symmetrical, but our ability to find a political and diplomatic solution depends on the abilities of both sides to trust each other. Without building trust, we will struggle to reach any sort of agreement that can be implemented. We must build trust between us, and you can help a lot in this regard. The future of the Middle East and Israel's integration into this region require the construction of such trust. We thank the leadership in Germany, which is committed, deeply committed to Israel's security, or deeply committed to the security of the State of Israel, and thank you to you. At the same time, also strives to build mutual trust between us and the Palestinians. Together with me here in the gallery of the Bundestag are the families, the Goldin and Shaul families, the Shaul and Goldin families. 5.5 years ago, during Operation Protective Edge, IDF soldiers were killed. Hadar Goldin and First Sergeant Oron Shaul. Their bodies are still held by Hamas. We once again ask for Germany's help and for the help of the whole international community in bringing our boys back home and our other citizens being held by Hamas, being held against international law and against good conscience. Hadar was the third-generation descendant of Holocaust survivors. In high school, he visited Auschwitz with his classmates, and Hadar wrote a letter to his family. This is what he wrote. I'm going to get off the carriage like many Jews before me. They marched their final steps, and I'm marching in the way that they taught me to grow out of the ashes, to grow from the ashes. So wrote Lieutenant Goldin. The State of Israel grew out of the ashes. It built a Jewish and democratic and Jewish state. No less Jewish and democratic, and no less democratic than Jewish. And all this in a single breath. In the name of the nation in Israel. I thank you. I thank you for your friendship, for your partnership in the truth, and I offer a prayer that we'll be able to continue looking bravely at history, to remember it, and to pave together a path to a future of tolerance, liberty, and success. May the memories of our brothers and sisters, the victims of the Holocaust, and the fighters against the Nazis, and the righteous among the nations, may those names be inscribed in our hearts forevermore.
Thank you.